All right, welcome to the first official episode of the VerseCast podcast with myself, Dan Zimmerman, and our co-host Jack Adler joining me. This will be the first episode of many, I assume, and we will be using this forum to explore some of the content that we touch on in our clips and other bits of content on TikTok. But we're gonna go into more detail. So if you actually enjoy hearing us talk, which I doubt it, you'll be able to join this podcast and chime in the comments below. So, our first episode, what do we even call this shit, Jack? What's its name?
The episode name?
No, no, no. Like the name of the
Ver-
podcast that I'm introducing right
VersePod.
now. The
VersePod.
VersePod. Word. First episode of the VersePod. Let's get it. So, Jack, first thing we're going to talk about on today's episode is it's been an exciting start to the NBA season. We got a lot of teams performing better than we expected, a lot of teams performing worse than we expected, but we've seen some faces in the MVP race. Obviously, it's still early that we don't normally see, specifically centers, two centers up there in the top. So break it down for me. Just who are the top candidates for MVP? About 20 games, 15 games into the season, and who are you leaning towards?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys, a lot of teams underperforming more than overperforming, I'd say. I mean, it's just shocking to see the Raptors out of the playoff picture this early. But the MVP race is kind of just, we're seeing some names in there different from usual. I mean, we got my boy Joel Embiid in my opinion, up at the top of the ladder right now. A lot of guys arguing for LeBron, KD to be up there. I think mostly just because of their name that comes along with it. But when you really break it down and you see that the Sixers, right now I think they're 12-2 when he plays and 0-3 when he doesn't. And he's the only player that's in the top 10 in points per game and rebounds per game in the entire league. So I mean, Embiid is, I think, far and away in first place for MVP right now. Who knows if that'll hold up knowing Embiid's injury history? But as a somewhat biased Sixers fan, I think that Embiid's taking it away right now. He's absolutely killing it. And then you gotta compare that to what Jokic is doing because he's fucking killing it as well, averaging 25 points per game, 12 rebounds per game, 9.6 assists per game, zero point 0.4 assists away from averaging a triple double. But you got to look at the Nuggets are 9-7 right now. Like it's just hard to really compare that to Embiid, who's on a winning team that is killing it right now, where Jokic is
Well, I
performing.
think they're both similarly important to their team. I think Ben Simmons has been playing poorly in many stretches of the season, and that's made Embiid have to be better. It's also made him look better. But
Simmons
if
is
we're talking about
ass.
who's the most valuable to the team, uh, Nikola Jokic makes the Denver Nuggets better than Joel Embiid makes the Sixers. If you're thinking about if you take Jokic off the floor, I'm pretty sure their net rating is bottom three in the league without Jokic on the floor, and their net rating with him on the floor is like 12th or 13th. Like he is single handedly putting this team in contention and keeping them in games late. I mean, not a lot of people watch Denver Nuggets games. I can't say I watch every Denver Nuggets games, but Jamal Murray has really struggled. And Jokic, I think, has been leaned on more so by his team. And you're right, Embiid stayed healthy, but Jokic is a consistent, healthy player, and he's getting it done in all three categories of uh, of of major concern. So to me, Jokic gets the edge over Embiid here, but I also think it's really early. Both of these guys could get hurt. Both of them could slow down. Both of their teams could start losing games, and we're gonna get back into the LeBron James versus fucking whoever guard
Yeah.
conversation.
I can't say I've watched a single Nuggets game this season yet either. But just statistically knowing that the Sixers are 12-2 with Embiid in the game on the floor and they're 0-3 in games that he doesn't play. The net rating thing, it's cute. It's a cute stat, but let's look at the records here. Like Embiid, the Sixers team is just significantly better with him in the game, and that shows something.
Well, if either of these guys win it, I'd be happy just to switch it up. I mean, a center winning the MVP Honestly, in 2K Sims, Jokic wins it like half the time, so I wouldn't be surprised if Jokic wins it and keeps it up. I mean, and as far as second round picks go, who's the last second round pick to win an MVP?
That's a good question. Yo, Jimmy, can we get you on that? No, but I mean, seriously,
Producers in my ear saying that he doesn't fucking know.
I think, nah, seriously, I mean, Jokic and Embiid just are changing the center culture because they don't play like the typical center who's just getting you boards and dishing the ball out. Like they're scorers and I mean, at least
Embiid
for
hit a
Jokic,
fadeaway 1 foot three to sink the Celtics the other night, and it's like, what is this?
Embiid's unlike any center I've ever seen play. I mean, the closest comparison is Hakeem Olajuwon, and that is fucking saying something. But Jokic he's averaging 9.6 assists per game. Like I've never seen that from a center. I've never seen that. And the fact that he's averaging more assists per game than Luka, that is just insane. Like obviously he's leading the
Yeah.
league for centers. I mean, I gotta check out the league leaders for assists in the NBA, but
Well, let's talk
I'm
about
honestly
Luca. You bring up Luca, but Luca, I'm pretty sure was the odds-on favorite for MVP going into the season, and the Mavericks are sitting at 8-8. I mean, they're that barely make the playoffs in the NFL. You know, if we're just talking 16 games, but
NFL,
Luca's
yeah.
averaging a 27, 9 and 8, I believe, which is
They're
still
the
a
nine seed in the
ridiculous stat
West.
line, huh?
The Mavs are the 9 seed in the West.
Yeah, I mean they didn't have Porzingis to start, but it looks like there's some serious holes on this team outside of Luca and Kristaps that they've been planning, they've been game planning for chasing a big free agent this summer. Victor Oladipo is a name that comes out if the Rockets were looking to trade him after I think 2 weeks left, and then they can trade him again. I don't think he's re-signing in Houston. So I don't know. Dallas is going to have to make a move, but you'd think Luca, if they were winning, would be up here in the MVP conversation. But he's got time.
Yeah, I mean, just going on to another name like that is would never even be mentioned in this conversation in my mind before the season. Bradley Beal. He's the league leader in points per game right now, 34 and a half points per game. I mean, the Wizards fucking blow. They're 3-9, so
I
it
mean,
just
he didn't
keeps
even make the All Star team last year, averaging 30. You think he's going to win the MVP? He could
that's
average 40, and he wouldn't win the MVP on the Wizards.
that's crazy though. Like the shape the league is in right now, how much depth there is of stardom. Like the
Most,
fact that Beal can average 30 and not make the All Star game. Like
yeah, that
looking
was
back at years in
ridiculous
the
stat.
past, like a guy averaging 30 is an all-star starter. Lock it in. Like it's crazy to see how much the league has evolved.
Yeah, it's a
But
Danny Granger type player.
yeah, but I guess moving on to the names that we expect to be in here, my boy Giannis. He scored at least 22 points in all but 2 games this season. One
Yeah,
of those I took his
crazy.
over in, so fuck you, Giannis. Um, but he's averaging 27 points per game, 10 and a half rebounds, 5.3 assists per game. But the one I want to highlight is he's shooting 58% from the line. Like,
That's
come on.
awful.
I don't care who the fuck you are. If you're shooting that from the line, you're not winning MVP of the NBA. Like that,
Well, for
it
him to
should be a
win a
rule.
third straight, he needs to be doing something just unsanitarily disgusting,
Yeah,
like just so good, and like that's not happening. And the Bucks aren't gonna be. I don't think the Bucks are gonna be. I think they could beat the Nets if that's what it comes down to, but I don't think the Bucks are gonna be the favorites to come out the East this year. But I see. We also have to talk about Kawhi Leonard in this conversation. He is on a roll. But before we do that, I just want to say Kevin Durant should not be in this conversation when he doesn't play the end of back to backs. The guy's going to end up playing of the 72 games this season. He'll probably play 45. To me, that's going to disqualify him. I mean, I'm all for keeping him healthy, but he is not the most valuable player on the in the league when James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Joe Harris would defeat almost everybody like on a nightly basis. So we're kicking Durant to the side. Jimmy, put a big X on Durant right now because he is not in the
and
conversation.
I mean the fact that you're bringing up the fact that KD's not playing back to backs, I think it's worth mentioning. My boy LeBron James, who is the only player aside from Jokic that we're speaking of today, that's in this conversation, that is playing in every game. And how fucking old is this dude? He's 36.
He's
And he's the
36.
one, like, none of these other guys are playing every game. They're taking nights off. LeBron is not taking a night off yet. He's played in every single game. Obviously, it's just a little annoying that he's still in this conversation. I mean, he's always the top name, the top
He
mention.
does.
And it's kind of like what Giannis is becoming, where you kind of have to blow everyone away to win the award because people are tired of giving it to you. You want a more of a headliner.
I think LeBron had a really strong argument for it last year, and in my opinion, should have won it because I don't see the Lakers needing him to be so crazy good, especially with the roster they have. I don't see them needing him to put up the numbers that would justify an MVP performance on the season. So like I agree he's in the conversation, but by the end of the season, I don't think it'll be down to LeBron and Giannis. I think it'll be maybe two or three guys, and none of them will be LeBron.
I agree. I do agree with that. And then I think it's worth mentioning that uh, obviously this MVP ladder is just going to keep changing as the season goes on, as guys step up, get hot. And right now, the hottest of them all, Kawhi Leonard, averaging 30 points per game in his last seven. The Clippers, I don't think it's a coincidence, are on a 7-game win streak. In these games, I mean, Kawhi stepping up, and altogether, the Clippers are stepping up. And it's just like, a player that kind of like is able to have that impact on a team, like I think that deserves to be at the top of an MVP race. And Kawhi Leonard is that guy. Like if when
Yeah.
he's hot, the Clippers are hot. When he's cold, the Clippers are cold. So I think it's hard to not have his name in the race. And he's honestly hasn't gotten enough credit, I feel like, the last few years for what he's been able to do.
Yeah, very quietly, the Clippers should not be counted out this season just because they blew the lead in the playoffs. I mean, they should still be looked at as a very scary team. I like the fact that they didn't blow it up. I mean, obviously Harrell left. Keep an eye on them to trade for Derrick Rose. I could see a Zubac and a pick or something for Rose to make the contracts work because the one thing Kawhi has always said is he doesn't want to play point guard, and in Toronto that's why it worked with Lowry. And last year he was frustrated playing so much of a primary ball handler role.
Just
So
Pat Bev sucks.
yeah, Pat Bev. Yeah, on offense, he's like a Chuck Hayes, if anyone remembers Chuck Hayes on the Rockets. But the Kawhi's definitely in the conversation. He's also kind of a guy that will take rest here and there. So I don't know if it'll keep him in the MVP convo. But hey, if Kawhi gets another ring and an MVP, we've got to start talking about him on the Mount Rushmore of guys just for what he's done to
Oh
franchises.
yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like just the fact that he left the Raptors after winning a championship with them is like, obviously he's not retiring like Peyton, but like that's some big dick energy there. Like coming
Yeah.
to a city for
And
half a
bringing a title to the Clippers is even bigger.
season. He said like, "What's up, Toronto? Here, take this trophy. All right, I'm out. Thanks. Thanks for having me."
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
he's a
that's
guy who
legendary.
may not play deep into old age, but could be one of the greatest to ever do it
Mhm.
by the end.
The greatest and the quietest.
Yeah, someone said that once Kawhi retires, we will never hear or see from him
Yeah.
again. All right, well that's probably a good breakdown of our MVPs. I guess you got Embiid, I got Jokic right now. We'll see how that shifts over the time being, and we'll
Yeah.
check in at a later point in the season. So this is our quarterly MVP report on the VersePod. All right, so next up, the Ravens obviously lost to the Bills in the playoffs this past season, and John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. Clearly, the Ravens are a good team, but we haven't been able to see them break through in the playoffs or even really look like they're going to break through in the playoffs. So Lamar's coming up on time for a new deal, time to get a contract above his rookie deal and extend him to stay in Baltimore. But what kind of money are you looking at giving Lamar Jackson after two playoff runs with not a whole lot to show for it? Obviously, the player himself is amazing. He's an MVP player. He can get it done on the only quarterback to ever have two back to back 1,000-yard rushing seasons, or just two in general. So I'm not hating on Lamar as a player, but from a roster construction point of view, from a what we've seen from you point of view, and from a durability point of view, I'm not sure I'm gonna give Lamar Jackson, the anything close to Mahomes money. Well, that's to start, but even Deshaun Watson money. I mean, I'm pretty sure Watson's on a 5-year 120, which doesn't even sound. Actually, no, that's not even accurate. I'm pretty sure Watson's on like a 5-year 170, because Lamar needs to be on a nice deal, but I don't know about pocket passer contracts versus Lamar and how he plays. So I don't know. I may stand out here, but I'm not itching to give Lamar 150 million over the next 4 years or 5 years. So
The issue is Lamar Jackson needs to be paid and treated like a running back in terms of these running backs don't get the long-term deals because they know how quickly they come and go. And I'm afraid that the Ravens are going to treat Lamar and he's going to be asking for that, like you said, pocket passer, quarterback money, guys that are going to play for you for 10, like for 10, 15 years.
mhm.
I don't see Lamar lasting that long. Like the talent that he brings is because of how young and fucking fast he is. I don't think that'll like obviously he's always gonna be that speedy self, but I really think that he's the type of player that can be injury prone and I mean can he throw the ball? Like I've been so unimpressed with his passing ability and I know he's the greatest
He
running
won an
quarterback.
MVP not just because he ran. I can't agree with you on the criticism of him throwing the ball. I think he's a great quarterback for what it's worth, but I agree he's not the pocket passer that even Deshaun Watson can do downfield.
I'd rather have Josh Allen as my quarterback. Like also looking at what he's done in the playoffs, it's just embarrassing. Like he hasn't been stepping up. Yeah, like he's throwing the ball nicely during the regular season. I mean, he couldn't do shit against the Bills last week.
I think
And
it's coaching in the playoffs. He did, yeah, he got shut down by the Bills, but he willed them to a win over the Titans. That 60-yard touchdown run was amazing. And I think Lamar isn't even the problem in Baltimore. I really think that there's both a coaching concern and well, I guess he's sort of the problem because you can game plan for him better than you can a guy like Mahomes or Brady that can just put the ball in the receiver's hands, 50, 60 downfield. So
he threw for 180 passing yards per game this year. And let's see, he ran for where is
67.
this? All right, I can't find. He ran for 67. Wow, that was impressive. It was 67 rush yards per game.
Crazy. That's
Um, That's crazy. I just think that it's kind of the NFL is shifting in terms of like quarterbacks are. It's more common to see these running quarterbacks who can take over games with their legs more than their arms. But I don't think it's winning Super Bowls. I don't think that Lamar Jackson will win a Super Bowl. And as the Ravens organization kind of looking towards the future, you have to be a little cautious of is this going to last? Like, is this Lamar magic really going to last? Or is it kind of was that MVP season somewhat of a fluke? And is he really going to be able to keep up this running and just not having the greatest arm? Like, is that really what's going to
that
work
would
long
truly
term?
be a Madden curse if something happens to him. But Lamar Jackson, imagine a world where both Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson get traded in the offseason. I mean, that would just be loopy.
They won't trade him. I really don't think they'd trade him. I think it's more about being cautious with the contract that they give him. I think he's in Baltimore to stay for now, but they can't like they'd be idiots if they give him the Patrick Mahomes contract.
I mean, a 3-year
And
deal would be better than a 5-year deal, and if I'm the GM in Baltimore, but I think building it with injury protections is going to be perhaps something they fight over of how much injury protections Baltimore as a team
yeah,
gets built in there, because I think it's going to be on their minds. Even though we do have to say he has not been injury prone so far in his career. He's been healthy, he's stayed healthy. but it's about the
Yeah,
winners.
until until the last few weeks of the season, where he came out in two of their games
Yeah,
in
Trace
crunch time. He came out
McSorley.
in crunch time in two of their games due to injury.
That was just to give Trace McSorley the internet fame he needed.
Yeah, I mean the first time he just
Lamar
didn't
had
play
to take a
shit.
poop. Remember? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean yesterday, this past game against the Bills, I don't even really know what happened. It was kind of mysterious. He just ended up heading to the locker
I
room,
think he got concussed.
and the Lamar Jackson lookalike, the clone came out and took over.
Well, maybe they should give him a new contract. What's his name? Huntley?
Yeah, I thought Lamar was just out there. He switched jerseys.
Resign Huntley, 5 years, 80 mil, backup contract. All right. Well, I mean, I think we're sort of in agreement. We got to be careful going into a Lamar Jackson deal, but he's worth being your franchise quarterback. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely worth being the franchise QB. It's just a matter of how many years that's really
Yeah.
realistic.
And that's on John Harbaugh.
Yes.
All right, so we've seen a couple performances now from the Brooklyn Nets since the big Harden trade, and they've had varying results. They didn't have Irving for some time being, and Harden and Durant were able to show that they could get it done. Irving returned. They lost two to Cleveland. Durant didn't play in the second game. But here we are a couple weeks after the Harden trade, and does it look like it's going to work, Jack? What's your over under on the 53 and a half wins for the Brooklyn Nets this season?
Here's the thing. I hated this trio from the start. I mean, I never really thought it was going to work. And after seeing those two games against the Cavs, obviously it somewhat confirmed that thought. But the thing is, I do think that this team will go over. I'm taking the over 53 and a half, but I'm
Keeping
taking,
in mind there's only 72 games.
I know there are 72 games and
They've
53 and a half
already lost
is a lot.
7. They can only lose 19.
Here's the thing. These guys, this trio can take nights off. Kyrie can take a night off and they'll still get a dub. Harden take a night off, still get a dub. The thing is, when it comes down to the playoffs, which is what I care about, fuck a regular season. When it comes down to the playoffs, this team is going to choke. They don't have the defense to match up against, one of these like lower seed teams because I do think that they'll end up being a 1 or 2 seed in the East. Said and done this season, but I don't see a way that this team can come out and share the ball in the playoffs because these guys are all going to want to put on their takeover badge and drop 30 themselves. But there's not enough basketball to go around. But they're not going to be able to play team defense. They're not going to be able to hold teams to low scoring nights. So I see the Nets getting upset in the first or second round by a team like the Raptors, who are just going to overpower them defensively and have that team chemistry and playoff experience to take over.
And Toronto could be there at the 8th or 7th seed. So
Exactly. Which is why I'm taking the over on Nets win total. I'm taking the under in whatever their playoff round total is.
that would be a rich parlay, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I mean, I was not a fan of this trio from the start. It's not realistic, but I would much rather see Kyrie get traded in a 3-team deal to the Knicks that leaves Westbrook on the Nets because I think that trio would really do it. Durant, Westbrook, and Harden running it back. To me, Irving, Harden, and Durant, it's not going to work in the playoffs, as Jack said, when you got to play the defense necessary. And they traded away Jared Allen for literally just to get one more first round pick in there. I don't know what Houston didn't want in Jared Allen. I don't know why Cleveland ended up with him there, but Brooklyn really, I think, got they overpaid for James Harden. They gutted their future, and they only have a couple players worth playing off the bench now at the forward and center position. So I think the Nets are going to have to make a trade. We've heard some rumors about JaVale McGee. That makes a lot of sense. He's on a small $3.5 million deal. They've also heard Kevin Love apparently, but he's on a much less small $28 million deal. So unless Irving is really bitched his way back to Cleveland in a swap for Kevin Love. I don't think that that's going to happen. But no matter what Brooklyn does, I don't see them competing in the playoffs. I do think they'll win their first round matchup, but I don't think they'll get past Milwaukee or even Miami potentially in the second round. So we'll see where it plays out. But right now, I'm very bearish on the Nets winning 53 games. Even I think they're going to win 42, 45. Keeping in mind there's less games this season, and I think we're going to see some real drama play out with Kyrie, Harden, and Durant at some point.
I just think it's crazy that the Nets love throwing their future away for to make a 1 2 year run. Like, what is good with that? Like,
This is a
time.
better run than Kevin Garnett and Pierce. That, to be
Oh,
fair,
for sure. They're definitely like obviously those guys were older, and right now they have 3 stars, somewhat in their prime, maybe a little after their prime, but like this is like one of the best big threes I think we've maybe the best big three we've seen in
Yeah,
the
on
NBA.
paper and historically, it's the best combination of players we've ever seen.
And I don't think that it works having 3 stars like that all respectively on their when they have their own team and they have like kind of the torch are dropping 35 a game on their own. It just doesn't work when you put them together for an 80 72 game season. Like they're gonna start hating each other because every guy wants the ball. You saw at the end of the game with at the end of the Cavs Nets game, Harden was kind of just dribbling at the top of the key, and KD's there like calling for the like, "Yo, give me the fucking ball!" And Harden just drove to the rack and like missed the layup. And KD, you see the frustration, like it's gonna happen.
Gonna
And
come, yeah. And Kyrie made that quote before the year that this is the first time he feels like the guy on his team can hit that shot too. You know, a shade at LeBron James when he said that. A weird thing to say. I mean, now Kyrie's probably the last option for a game winner between Durant, Harden, and Irving. I think it's gonna go to Durant, and then Harden seems to be taking on this new unselfish play. He was never a selfish player. He just had a selfish scheme, you know, that D'Antoni put in. It was all around Harden's game. So I don't think Harden's a selfish player. I think he's going to average like 12 assists on the Nets,
he
and
has
I'm pretty
11.
sure he has been so far. So
Harden's averaging 11 assists per game right now this season. Um, what's crazy is if you watch him play, you would never think that because he makes these like what happens is he drives to the rack and the whole team's focuses on him,
collapse.
whole defense, and so every pass he makes because he makes like 11 a game, it's to a wide open guy for an easy shot. I think that's why his assists really rack up because it's really rare that he actually makes that pass to an open guy, and when he does, the shot gets hit because they're wide fucking open.
I think statistically, I mean, I think he's the only guy to ever lead the league in scoring and assists in the same year. And I think when it's all said and done, he may go down as the best offensive player of all time. Just the how unguardable he is, and the numbers he puts up are truly extreme. Um, but still, even all that scoring doesn't stop scoring on the other end, and I'm not
Yeah.
confident Brooklyn's going to be able to do that at any
Yeah, I
rate.
think he could go down as the greatest scorer of all time. I don't know about offensive player. And the greatest scorer of all time, doesn't necessarily bring a winning culture, attitude, and
Mhm.
just like defense. Definitely doesn't bring defense either. So that's where I think is the downfall of the Nets, the defensive end. I mean, let's see. Like right now, they're letting up an average of 116 points per game, the highest in the league. And
Hmm.
they're not the highest in the league, highest out of all teams currently in the playoff picture. So I see the Nets struggling to hold teams to less than 120 points per game in the playoffs, and you're not winning many games. I mean, obviously, there's one team to keep up with them. It is the Nets, but it'll be interesting to see because they're gonna have to be on their A game if they're letting up that many points a game.
Yeah, I mean, you're confident they'll hit that win total. I'm not, but I think we're in agreement on the playoffs. So unless they make, I mean, they could make a trade for a center. They have nothing to really give up, but DeAndre Jordan's a great center. He just can't play more than like 29 minutes a game. So we'll see what they do. But overall, Brooklyn is. If I'm a
I,
Brooklyn Nets fan, I'm probably very, very, very cautious. Right, cautiously optimistic.
yeah, I mean they're fun to watch, so like
Yeah.
I'm excited honestly as an NBA fan just to have them to watch. Like it's good for the NBA because like you got a lot of people tuning in just to see this big three playing together. But
Oh
I
yeah.
really do think that like, acquiring someone like JaVale McGee would be a great move for them. I mean, the Cavs are definitely interested in like getting draft capital for these big contract guys like Drummond and Love because the Cavs have a lot of potential, but they know they're not doing shit this year. So it could
Mhm.
be a good move for both teams.
Yeah, they'll have to make a change, make an adjustment somewhere. I don't think Steve Nash is doing much coaching either. Just
I
a
don't think he
hot
has to.
take.
I don't think anyone's listening, anyways.
No one's replying to his text, that's for sure.